Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video, I wanted to talk about a topic that so many of you were asking me on Instagram, which is my IVF during the second pregnancy. So how I got pregnant the second time around, did I go for IVF, how was the process like, was it difficult, was it easy? There were so many questions around it that I thought I'll make a video so I can address some of those common questions. Now those of you who follow me know that my first daughter, Nishka, was conceived via IVF. We had a round of egg retrieval. We retrieved the egg, we genetically tested it, and then when they became embryos, we froze the ones that passed the genetic testing, and we froze those embryos. We used one of those embryos to conceive Nishka, and then we kept the rest of them in case in the future we wanted to have kids. This time around, we decided to have a second baby, and instead of trying naturally, we decided to just use our frozen embryos because we had already had them, we had genetically tested them, and it just kind of made sense. So I'm going to break down and answer some of the questions you have. The biggest question was, why didn't we try naturally the second time around, and why did we opt for embryo transfer? Now it's very simple. The first time around, we froze our embryos, we had them, we spent so much time, effort and money to, genetically test them, make sure everything was okay. And so second time around, it just made sense to use the frozen embryos. There's no point just keeping them in the freezer and trying naturally, especially when they're genetically tested. We know they are quality embryos, so we just wanted to kind of use them. We didn't want that unpredictability. When you try naturally, there's some amount of unpredictability. You have to plan it, there's uncertainty. Knowing my body, my limitations, my challenges that I had the first time around, I wanted to skip all of that and have a very predictable process. Again, IVF is not predictable because you never know whether it's going to be successful or not, how many rounds you'll need. But the amount of planning I could do, I wanted to do that. And we wanted to use our frozen embryos anyway. So it all made sense, and we opted for an embryo transfer the second time around. The second question I got a lot is, did we do an egg retrieval? No, we did not. We got the number of embryos we wanted in our future family planning the first time around, and we just had an embryo transfer this time. So that was the biggest reason we did not try naturally. We wanted to kind of plan this pregnancy. We wanted to use our frozen embryos. They were all genetically tested. So these were some of the reasons we opted for just going for an embryo transfer, which, let me put as a disclaimer, is not in any way it's easy. It's still expensive. It still requires your body to go through injections. You still have to prep it. There's a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability. Just because you have genetically sound embryos, it doesn't mean that your body will be receptive towards it, that you'll have a successful embryo transfer, you'll get pregnant. There are so many factors in this. It's hard for me to encapsulate that in a video. So there is unpredictability, but that's the route we wanted to go, and that's what we chose. Okay, the next question I got was, how long did I wait to do an embryo transfer after my first? So I had Nishka in 2022. Usually doctors recommend that you wait 18 months after giving birth to start your second round of embryo transfer or IVF round, just because your body needs that much time. And we followed that protocol. We trusted our doctor, so we waited 18 months. Once Nishka was 18 months, we started the process. We started doing my testing. We tested me for cysts, fibroids. We did all of the tests. We prepped my body. I went on birth control. So that took a little bit of time. In between, I took a little bit of break. And then in November is when I actually had my embryo transfer. So I started my medication in November of last year, and I conceived end of November. So we are very grateful that the embryo transfer worked the second time around. We started the process early November. I got pregnant end of November. That's how long we waited. I think 18, 19, so 20 months gap we gave between me delivering and me going for a second embryo transfer. The next question I also got was how the embryo transfer was the second time around. So the process is the same, whether it's the first or second or the third, whatever. Basically, they kind of, put you on birth control, they control your cycle, and you still have to take your injections, including the progesterone, and they were checking my lining constantly, and when they felt it was right, the embryo transfer happened, and that's how the process works. So the process is pretty similar every time you do an IVF round. You cannot escape the medications, unfortunately. I did continue my progesterone up to 8 or 9 weeks, I think. I think they check for your progesterone level to see if it's at the right amount before you can stop your progesterone injections. In Nishka, I remember I took it up to 10 weeks. This time I took it, I think, around 8 weeks. Then another question, which I actually got a lot when I did my first round of IVF, is that what did I do, did I not do to ensure a successful embryo transfer? Honestly, there's no right answer because every body is different. How receptive your body is to medication is very different. And, whether your body will take the embryo or not is very different. Some of the things that I do think can be helpful, again, it's not generic to all. There is no rule book, but I think genetically testing your embryos really helps to kind of reduce the heartaches. So we did genetically test all our embryos. So I think that does help. A lot of people choose not to do it. It's a very personal choice. I do think that helps the process a little bit. After my embryo transfer, honestly, after Nishka, when I had my first embryo transfer, when I had Nishka, I took a lot of rest. This time I had a toddler in hand, so it was very difficult to get that kind of rest. So, I was still very active. Of course, the day of my embryo transfer, I took it a little easy. So that's something I did. The next thing, I did continue with my acupuncture. I actually did a lot more acupuncture sessions this time around than I did with my first, just because there was so many things going on. I wasn't getting sleep and I just needed to relax my body. So I continued my acupuncture session right after the embryo transfer, and even after that I did a couple of sessions, and that helped me a lot. In terms of food and diet, I continued eating whatever I wanted. I didn't maintain a pregnancy diet right after my embryo transfer. I avoided lifting any heavy weights. Again, all these are personal choices. You should speak to your doctor on what your protocol should be, what's safe for you. I did all that, and all vice tail, I did eat McDonald's fries. I did it with Nishka. I did it this time around after my embryo transfer. I don't know what the logic is, but I wouldn't say no to having McDonald's fries, so I had that after my embryo transfer. If there's any secret sauce to having a successful embryo transfer, you just have to trust your team and doctor and follow all the protocol that they give you. After 9 days of my embryo transfer, I found out I was pregnant. Officially, I have no chills, so I actually tested myself on day 4 or day 5, and it was a positive pregnancy test, so that's how I got to know I was pregnant. The other question that I wanted to answer, I got a lot, was did I have any symptoms of being pregnant after my embryo transfer? Honestly, I did not. I mean, I can overthink it and say it was this, it was that, but honestly, there were not any symptoms. I don't think I had any symptoms with Nishka. Even with this, maybe I felt like my chest was very heavy, but that could also be the medication and the hormones, so I didn't read too much into it. But other than that, I had zero symptoms both time around. So if I base off being pregnant on those symptoms, I had none. So I wouldn't overthink it. I would just wait for the day 9 test, because that would kind of assure you on what the result is. Would I have more babies? What would I do with my frozen embryos? I think we are good with 2. I don't think we have plans to have any more babies. In terms of what am I going to do with our leftover embryos, I don't know. It's a conversation Kaushik and I have not had yet. We will think about it later, one thing at a time. Right now I'm focusing on being pregnant, giving birth, and just kind of staying healthy. We haven't really decided what we're going to do with the leftover embryos. It's something we'll just have to think about. So I don't have the answer to these questions, unfortunately. When I do, I may not share it. I think it's a very personal thing. A lot of people tend to ask me how many embryos we had, how many embryos are left. I think a lot of people are okay answering that question. I'm personally not comfortable answering that question, and I do think that everyone should think a little bit before asking such questions. Just because someone has shared their IVF story doesn't kind of give you the right to just ask them very deep personal questions about how many embryos they have, because if you know someone who's going through the IVF process, or if you have gone through the IVF process, you know how challenging and difficult it is. And the number of eggs or embryos retrieved can really take a toll on the person going through it. You tend to compare and say, why is my body not performing versus someone else? You just go into that very weird zone of how many eggs you retrieve, how many embryos were mature and you ended up having and freezing. So I am very sensitive about that because I have had friends who've been very impacted by it. I was very overconscious, and I was very stressed out about our number of eggs and embryos. So I understand that feeling. So I would just, it's a question I do not like to answer. It's very personal, and I prefer not asking this to anybody else unless they are comfortable with it. So this is the story. Once you get pregnant, after an IVF transfer, after an embryo transfer, you graduate from the clinic around 9 to 10 weeks, and that's when you get transferred to your OBGYN. After that, I was in the care of my OBGYN and my high-risk doctor. Because of my past pregnancy, I had a couple of risks, so I do have a high-risk doctor, and that's pretty much it. So I kind of wanted to answer some of these questions today. I know some of you wanted to know what prep I did before having an embryo transfer, which was not a lot. I just followed the doctor's instruction of following all the medicines and prepping my body, getting all my tests, thyroid, anti-clotting, and all sorts of tests that the doctor recommended me depending on my risks. So that's pretty much the prep I did, and I would advise everybody, if you trust your team, just trust the protocol and medication, and just be aware, advocate for yourself. And IVF, again, is not an easy process. So if anyone is going through it, my heart goes out to you. I know it's not easy. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to answer it. And hopefully I'll make such more tidbit videos that can help you if you're navigating through something similar. But I'll see you guys next time. Till then, lots of love.